Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T. I hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving and that nobody has a stomachache. Now, let's jump right in. We now know where in the multi-level rental house Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Zana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were sleeping when they were attacked. Kaylee Gonsalves and Madison Mogan were up on the third floor in separate bedrooms. Zana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin were in a bedroom on the second floor. The unharmed students, as we already knew, were on the lowest level, which is where the front door to the home is. This house is built into a hill, and the back patio with sliding doors actually leads into the kitchen, which is technically on the second floor. It is believed that the perpetrator came into the home through sliding glass doors on that back patio. Note that it's the same patio where the roommates, along with Ethan Chapin, had taken photos of themselves earlier on Saturday afternoon. Whether that door was unlocked because of that earlier photo shoot, or whether the perpetrator was able to somehow jimmy it open, we, the public, don't yet know. But the police did say early on that there were no signs of a break-in, so I'm leaning toward the doors being accidentally left unlocked. If the perpetrator did come in through those sliding glass doors, that means that he, she, or they likely came through the wooded area we see behind the kitchen patio. The sliding doors lead directly into the kitchen, so the perpetrator would have walked through the kitchen onto the foyer and then into the living room. From there, he, she, or they could have either gone through the laundry room to the room on the second floor where Zana and Ethan were staying that night, or he, she, or they could have headed straight up the stairs to the third floor where Kaylee and Madison were staying. And I say could have because the perpetrator could have done this in the opposite order as well. Gone straight up to the third floor and then gone back down to the second floor where Zana and Ethan were. The fact that Zana and Ethan's room had to be accessed through the laundry room tells me that the perpetrator likely had been in that home before and that he, she, or they either wanted to harm Zana and Ethan along with Kaylee and Madison, or some of the victims were collateral damage, as they say. And now that we know that the second floor is where that back patio is, and that Xana's room was on that floor, it makes it clear that where the red stuff that runs through all our veins was seen seeping out of the house was likely from Xana's room. I know that's a hard detail to talk about, but some people were thinking that it had somehow made it all the way down there from the third floor, and I don't think that's the case. We also now have confirmation that the dog that Kaylee shared with her ex-boyfriend, Jack D., a curly labradoodle named Murphy, was in the house at the time of the attack. If only dogs could talk. There are no reports of the dog barking or confronting a perpetrator making some sort of noise, nor are there any reports of the dog being injured. Does this point to the dog knowing the perpetrator? Maybe. As for where Murphy is right now, he was released into the care of his owner, so I would assume that that would be Jack D. We also now know that not just Zana fought back. Another student showed signs of defensive wounds as well. I'm assuming that would be Ethan Chapin. I say this because I doubt the perpetrator expected to find two people in Xana's bedroom. Two people in one room meant that either one of them woke up while the other was being attacked, or both were perhaps in bed but not fully asleep yet when the perpetrator showed up. or they could have been sleeping, but either way, when the perpetrator attacked one of them, it would have awakened the other one. So somebody would have been fighting to help the other person at some point. The two victims likely both fought back and both suffered defensive wounds trying to fight off that perpetrator. We know Xana had defensive wounds, so it seems likely that the other one would be Ethan. Especially if the perpetrator wasn't expecting to find a male in Xana's room. Perhaps this threw the perpetrator off, seeing an extra person. Two people in a room have a better chance at fighting off an attacker. One person in a room would likely not have had any opportunity. As for Kaylee and Madison, because they were in separate rooms, I think the perpetrator was able to silently approach them. Both young women were said to be intoxicated to some degree. Would they have fallen into a deep slumber quickly after giving up on getting through to Jack D? If so, did that allow the perpetrator to slink silently into their rooms and place a key injury somewhere that would have prevented them from crying out? I heard one criminal profiler describe this type of attack with this type of instrument, a silent death. There's no loud bang as you expect from another type of instrument, and the perpetrator can strategically silence the person being attacked. And we have also learned that the police have received hundreds of pieces of information suggesting that Kaylee may have had someone following her. I don't want to say the actual term, but it starts with an S and it rhymes with Walker. However, the police so far have been unable to verify any of these tips, thanks in part to social media, where so many young people share every aspect of their lives with strangers. It's easy to see why any one of these beautiful young women might have attracted such attention. A former FBI special agent has weighed in to say that the perpetrator, by entering the occupied home during the night, knew the students' routines. This same former agent said that he believes this could not be a random attack because the perpetrator was risking a lot by entering a home where an occupant could have had some sort of weapon, or where multiple residents could have confronted him, her, or they. The perpetrator knew what he would be facing when he walked into that home, except for maybe Ethan Chapin. I don't think the perpetrator was expecting to find a guy there. As to what happened on the evening of Saturday, November 12th, 2022, we know that Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle were at a party at the Sigma Chi fraternity house from 8 p.m. until 9 p.m. That frat house is located on a hill just across a field and just a few minutes walk from the girls' rental home on King Road. In fact, you can just about see the frat house from the girls' rental house and vice versa. So could someone from that frat house have been watching the girls' house with binoculars? Maybe. By the way, I keep turning my head when I have to say words that begin with a P because those are called plosives and they seem to create a pop, and I don't want to hurt your ears with them anymore. So I'm really trying hard. Okay, well, I was speculating about that. I'm not accusing anybody from the frat house of having anything to do with this, but I think it's possible that that could be a perch from which someone could look into the girl's home, or at least see if the lights were on or off. I do think also that it's likely that Xana and Ethan walked to the party and back home from it, since the two buildings or structures were so close to each other. After that, no one seems to know where Ethan and Xana were until they returned home at around 1:45 a.m. So that part of the night remains a mystery so far. As for Kaylee Gonsalves and Madison Mogen, we know they were at the Corner Club bar on Main Street from around 10:20 p.m. until 1:45 a.m. According to Kaylee's sister, Olivia, the two young women traveled to the bar and back home in an Uber. I know a lot of people keep mentioning a private party car, but Kaylee's sister has seen the Venmo payments and she's saying that they traveled in an Uber. And a local man named Joe Vito, who was at the Corner Club sports bar Saturday when Kaylee and Madison were there, described both women as catching the attention of many men at the bar. Vito said, and I quote, "A lot of guys were talking to them at the Corner Club," end quote. Vito added that Kaylee was visibly intoxicated and Madison was glass-eyed. Vito said, and I quote, "I audibly said, 'ooh,' out loud. She was just stumbling through," end quote. That wasn't a very nice thing to say, but it does give us an image of the condition Kaylee and Madison were in that night. This same guy left the bar before the girls, but ran into them again at the grub bus. Yes, it's called the grub bus, so I'll be using that from now on. Vito said, and I quote, "I was just there waiting because the grub bus takes forever when a bunch of drunk zombies show up there," end quote. Another not so tactful way of describing people. But anyway, it gives us an image. Vito said Kaylee and Madison turned up with the guy in the white hoodie. And he said this guy was actually being nice and trying to make sure that the girls made it home safely. And apparently when Kaylee and Madison were waiting for their food, their Uber showed up and the driver was telling them to hurry up. So according to this Vito guy, Kaylee allegedly took the takeaway dish of pasta and ran to the car without paying the grub bus. We also now know that a neighbor's surveillance camera captured Kaylee and Madison returning to their rental home at 1:56 a.m. So that time is accurate and set in stone. Note that in their news conference yesterday, November 23rd, 2022, the police said the following: investigators will be working through Thanksgiving. 2. 103 individual pieces of evidence were collected at the crime scene. 3. More than 4,000 photos were taken of the crime scene. 4. More than 1,000 new tips have been gathered, and more than 150 interviews have been conducted. 5. Multiple 3D scans of the home have been conducted. In case you don't know what these are, these 3D scans allow investigators to rapidly acquire highly detailed 3D models of the crime scene. The technology allows investigators to analyze crime scenes at a later point in time through the scanned 3D models. So it sounds like the investigators don't have to capture everything they need at the crime scene right after the crime. If they have these 3D models, they can continue to observe the crime scene exactly how it appeared on the day they first arrived at it. Apparently, this is very expensive technology, so many crime scene investigative units are unable, sadly, to use it. It sounds amazing. Moving back to my list of info. 6. Idaho Governor Brad Little has provided $1 million in funding to support the investigation. Perhaps some of this money has gone toward those pricey 3D scans. 7. Vehicles searched at the scene the day of the attack belonged to the victims and surviving roommates. The instrument used to commit the crime is being described as a fixed blade. And to top off the latest news, let me also share some unverified rumors. Some internet sleuths thought of looking at the students' Venmo transactions, and they noticed that Ethan Chapin's last Venmo was to a guy named Jack K. I don't want to say his last name because he may have nothing whatsoever to do with this crime. The other odd detail about that is that someone else named Molly G, and again, I'm not saying the last name, made a Venmo transaction to Jack K's sister, Liz K, on the night of the crime and labeled the Venmo transaction 3:30 a.m. That's weird. Investigators have said that they believe the crime occurred between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. Could these two people with a last name starting with a K have something to do with the crime? No one seems to know yet. This all may mean nothing, or it may mean something. We've seen odd details in other cases, like the Kylie Rodney case, and felt certain at times that certain people had to be involved, when in the end, it turned out to be an unfortunate accident, unless, of course, you're one of the people who continue to believe the conspiracy theories. There is something positive to report as well, and that is that Ethan Chapin's fraternity, Sigma Chi, has established a scholarship fund to honor their fallen friend. They are calling it the Ethan Chapin Memorial Scholarship Fund, and it will be presented annually to a deserving undergraduate member of the Gamma Eta, I think it's Eta or Eta, chapter. Gamma Eta chapter. As of late Thursday, the fund was at $9,454 with a goal of $25,000. That's a beautiful way to keep Ethan Chapin's memory alive. And it's a way to make the mentioning of his name something happy and not just associated with this horrible crime. No one wants their loved one only to be remembered in association with an unspeakable crime. I will leave a link to the scholarship in the description, and I will be donating half of the monies from my memberships to this scholarship this month. I hope you guys are okay with that. I want my channel to be a source of good whenever possible. We talk about these crimes and it can be very bleak and depressing. If we can help in some small way, I want to be able to use this channel to do that. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories,